President, please be seated. The court is now in session. Before the chamber gives the floor to the co-prosecutors, I would like to be informed of the time needed by the co-prosecutors and the lead co-lawyer. So could you brief the chamber of how much more time you two need?
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Your Honours. The prosecution would be requesting another 45 minutes if possible. The next session will finish with the documents in relation to the targeting of the Vietnamese. Then we would like to, if we were able, to present 45 minutes on the targeting of Lon Nol soldiers and officials. And what we would ask, if that was possible, that the civil parties would continue from 3 till 4, and then we present 45 minutes tomorrow. If not, what we thought we may do was put forward the references in a Rule 92 submission, but preferably we would like to present some of those documents for 45 minutes tomorrow. Thank you.
President, what about lead co-lawyers for civil party? As the co-prosecutor stated, the lead co-lawyer for civil parties will need 1 hour from 3 to 4 p.m. as stated by the co-prosecutor. President, so now you two can proceed, co-prosecutors and lead co-lawyers.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your Honours, we left off at the 26th of April 1977. I'd now like to move to the 15th of June 1977, and it's a document E3240. It's a telegram from the North East Zone, Secretary to the party centre. And if I can quote at English ERN 00897 667 to 68, Khmer 0000 1266 to 67, and French 0028 2550 to 51. And if I can just briefly read the report, the North East Zone Secretary states that at 9 a.m. on the 14th of June, the production unit 801, stationed at 107, whilst patrolling, arrested 209 Vietnamese soldiers, including 9 females, in the vicinity of O Lac, 4 kilometres south of road number 9. Almost all of them are of Jarai ethnicity who speak Khmer with an ethnic accent, and they have already been kept in our custody. The report goes on to state that based on our examination, they are enemies from outside who had intended to come to burrow in our territory but failed and were forced to change their whereabouts, unquote. Your Honours, the North East Zone Secretary did not believe them, and at the end of the document they said Angkar's comments are requested, and this document was copied to Pol Pot, Nguyen Chia and others, and to the Office of Documentation. Your Honours, on the case file there is evidence and witnesses will be coming shortly, and certainly in paragraph 804 of the indictment it states that these Vietnamese troops were executed. The relevance of that document, Your Honours, is that there was a policy in place to kill combatants or civilians of Vietnamese race. The next document, Your Honour, I would like to refer to is a Tramcock record. It's of the 4th of August 1977. It's E3/4112, and it's a report from the district, the chief of Cabal Pau village, reporting on a certain person named Haek, H-I-E-K. And in short, the report says that he was lazy, and it goes on to explain how lazy he was, and he was sick and hadn't eaten well. But it goes on to say that it is to confirm that this named Huck is a half-breed Vietnamese. And this is at 003222154 in the English, Khmer 00270987 to 88, and French 00623850. Your Honour submitted that this report, identifying that Huck was of half-breed Vietnamese, is evidence of targeting of Vietnamese civilians in the Tramcock district. And if I can move to the 6th of September 77, the same E3 number /2447 at English 00355474, Khmer 00270733 to 34, and French 00632162. It's a similar report where it states that Hai D, a youth in Les Beaux commune, a student, said that at present he does not want to be alive, it would be better to die. The report goes on to explain that he complained a lot about not having enough food, etc. And then it further states at the end of the report, P.S. this person is a Yuan. And then it's further stated in the report that Comrade Kit, on the 6th of September 1977, stated, request that a thorough interrogation be conducted because this person is an organised string of the CIA. We would submit again, Your Honours, that this is evidence of a policy to target Vietnamese civilians in the Tramcock district. And further, E3/2050, and this is now on the 17th of September 1977 in Tramcock, and I refer to English 0027 6576 to 77, Khmer 0007 9111, and French 0085 8042. This report is dated on the 17th of September 77. It's been sent to Angkar in the district, and it relates to the arrest of 3 women. And it talks about the women having conflicts because they refused to do their labour work, and they wouldn't basically do enough work. But when it lists the 3 women, the first woman, Niang Ao, is listed as ethnic Yuan, wife of a district chief. Angkar has already smashed the husband, and the prosecution is submitting, Your Honours, that this indicates that, again, that Vietnamese civilians are being targeted and arrested because of their race. I'd now like to turn to the 1st of January 1978, and this is E3/248, and it's at ERN number English 0032 4809 and Khmer 0002 1054 and French 0063 1446. And this is a report from Sao Surin to Office 870, and he reports on the security situation at the border. And he states, to respected and beloved brothers of M870, we would like to report 9 UN people fleeing from their country. According to their interrogations, they said the UN had assigned them to come to spy inside Kampuchea and live with the Kampuchean people in order to grasp the Kampuchean people. Stop. And then it states, now we have swept them away. Your Honour, we would submit that this again shows that Vietnamese either combatants or spies or civilians were targeted by the CPK and at the very least were not given the protections under the Geneva Conventions for prisoners of war, if in fact they were so, but they were killed. Your Honour, I'd now like to turn to a document E3 7/741 and its instructions of Office 870, and it's dated the 3rd of January 1978. And it relates to instructions to the RAK, the zones, the sectors, the districts, the cooperatives, regarding the methodology to attack Vietnam enemies and spies. And if I refer to the second paragraph, or the first paragraph, perhaps if I give the ERN number, English 0029 6006 to 07, Khmer 0028 428 to 82, and French 0061 1867 to 68. And the paragraph it states, I quote, to sum in one word, it's imperative to be absolute in politics, ideology and organisation to eliminate the pacifist agents, espionage activities and psychological warfare of the enemy. The levels of the party, zones, sectors and the battlefield command committees, party committees, officers and ministries must raise clear measures and closely cooperate. It then goes on to state, it's imperative to constantly do political, ideological and organisational work among our people to always make them warm by solving living conditions and shelter. It's imperative to have firm base cadres present constantly to constantly stir up national and class anger among the people towards the UN enemy invader in order to turn such anger into material anger and carry out other activities. Your Honour, it's submitted that this document assists in proving that Vietnamese within Cambodia were the target of violence, and the document creates a high-level climate of paranoia and distrust towards Vietnamese, non-combatants and combatants alike. And I'd now turn to the 16th of January 1978. It's E3/4127, and it relates to a Tram Kak district record at English 0036 2232, Khmer 0027 0809, and French 0063 2507. And it's a report from Trapang Tamang Tabang from Chom. And he sends this report to Comrade Ahn to be notified of the activities of the enemy who was sent by me as follows. And he refers to this person called Nam, and basically the report explains that he was complaining about carrying on with the revolution. And at the fourth paragraph it states, this contemptible Nam is a pure Yuan. And he's asking his brother to acknowledge the information. That's the person that wrote the report. Again, Your Honours, we would say that this is further evidence that civilians were targeted because they were of Vietnamese race. I'd now like to turn to the 29th of January 1978, E3/1249, and ERN number 00008894 to 95 English, and Khmer 00224832, and French 00292683. And Your Honours, this is a FIBIS report. It's a BBC media report from the Phnom Penh Home Service Radio. And it's dated the 29th of January. And this is a report that relates to a broadcast confession obtained from a captured Vietnamese soldier. And the confession basically explains what the goals of the Vietnamese army were. And we submit that this document assists in showing that captured Vietnamese military tortured confessions were used as propaganda to be publicised on the radio in order to incite the population to direct their actions towards destruction of the Vietnamese, whether combatants or civilians. Your Honours, there were many of these broadcasted confessions on the Phnom Penh radio, and if we look at E3/9423, this, Your Honours, is a prisoner list, and it's called Annex 27, the Vietnamese prisoners entering S21. And it's a list of 345 prisoners that were recorded on the master S21 prisoner list, E3/342. And this list was extracted from the larger list to show, at least from the records, how many Vietnamese prisoners were taken to S21. Of those 345, 19 on this list of 345 from S21 had their confessions broadcasted on Phnom Penh radio. I won't give you the numbers now, we'll file them with the court, but it goes to show that Vietnamese prisoners who were questioned under torture were used as propaganda to incite the Cambodian population and forces against the Vietnamese. You'll see from that list, Your Honours, that the prisoners range from arriving at S21 from as early as 1976. There are many from 1976, and the vast majority of them are not listed as regular Vietnamese soldiers, but they're listed as spies, and they're listed as spies from different parts of Cambodia, particularly on the eastern border. And so we would submit that this document assists in proving that Vietnamese combatants and non-combatants were arrested and taken to S21 and executed without being given, at the very minimum, the protections under the Geneva Conventions. I would now move to the 14th of February 1978. It's E3/9375, and this describes it's a military telegram, and it's copied to Nguyen Chia, and it describes the deployment of Vietnamese forces, and it also reports on the arrest of 2 Vietnamese and their transfer to S-21, and Pol Pot and Nguyen Chia are copy to that, and that's at English 0118-5439, and Khmer 0002-0949, and French 0032-9533. And we submit this assists in proving that the policy of killing Vietnamese combatants or civilians. I'll now move to January-February 1978, E3/726. This is a revolutionary youth magazine, and in brief, it talks about the enemy situation, but particularly at English 0027-8717 and Khmer 0006-3495 and French 0052-4420-21, it states, "It's imperative to always see the life and death contradictions with every type of external enemy, in particular the aggressive, expansionist, territory-swallowing UN enemy and their clique." And we would submit the terms used, every type of external enemy and the UN enemy and their clique, is a direction to the troops to kill, directions of troops to kill not only Vietnamese combatants, but Vietnamese civilians. I would now turn to the 1st of April 1978, and it's E3/928, and it's a report from the Division 164 Commander, Mir Smut, on the 1st of April 1978. It's copied to Pol Pot, Nguyen Chia, Yang Sari, and the documentation. And at English 0018-3357, Khmer 0001-7026, and French 00611-668, it states that on the 1st of April 1978, in sum, the number of UN have been captured and shot to death from the 27th of March 1978 through 30th of March 1978 is 120. And we would submit again, this is evidence of the intention of CPK leadership to kill combatants and Vietnamese combatants and non-combatants as they were captured and then shot to death. And then, Your Honours, I would like to turn to the 15th of April 1978. This is E3/562, and it's a statement from Q Sampan. It's a report from the Phnom Penh Home Service, and it's headed, "Phnom Penh Rally marks the 17th of April anniversary." This is the 3rd anniversary of Democratic Kampuchea. And Q Sampan states, gives this speech at a meeting of 20,000 people, and it covers a number of topics, and including, of course, the defence of Cambodia. And if I can just take Your Honours to a few quotes, at English, S0001-0559-60, French 0028-0375. I believe at this stage for this section, there's no Khmer translation. Kusabhan states, we should, quote, should strive wholeheartedly to fulfil all the tasks the party has assigned each of us in contribution to the daily activities, so as to completely and forever eliminate the aggressive enemies of all stripes, particularly the expansionist, annexationist Vietnamese aggressors from our Cambodian soil. And following from that, certain resolutions were adopted at that meeting. And in English, it's 0001, 0563, Khmer 0024, 9989, and French 0028, 0380. And it states, in the field of national defence, to expel resolutely from Cambodia territory and destroy forever all the expansionist, annexationist Vietnamese aggressors, and 5, to exterminate resolutely all agents of the expansionist, annexationist Vietnamese aggressors from our units and from Cambodian territory forever. We submit, Your Honours, that that is evidence of intent, obviously to kill combatants and non-combatants alike by the use of terms, Vietnamese combatants and non-combatants alike, by the use of terms enemies of all stripes and all agents of the Vietnamese. Your Honours, I would refer now to the April 1978, the same month, revolutionary flag, E34604, and this is a published speech of Pol Pot at the same anniversary. And he states, at English 00519836 and Khmer 0006 4717 and French at 0052 0348. Originally, did the UN ever fight us and win? The UN have wanted to make Kampuchea their subject since 1930. In 1970, could they take Kampuchea? Could they not take it? In 1975, were they able to take Kampuchea? They could not. And now, how about the UN? There are no UN in Kampuchean territory. Formerly, there were nearly 1 million of them. Now, there is not one seed of them to be found. So then, our view is, do not give up in advance. Look at the history. Can the UN swallow up Kampuchea or not? They cannot. The relevance of that passage, Your Honours, we would submit, is that certainly by April 1978, let's say admission by Pol Pot that there were no Vietnamese left in Cambodia. In this speech, Pol Pot goes on to address at English 00519838 to 39, Khmer 0006 4720, and French 0052 0351. The issue of the principle of Cambodians individually killing 30 Vietnamese each. And I quote, "The party has determined to keep on attacking them until they accept the sea border and the air border too. We must keep on fighting, 1 against 30, for them to recognise this, recognise it on paper and recognise it on the world stage, that they dare not approach our borders again." And then, Your Honours, the speech goes on to talk about how there were 50 million residents in Vietnam and only 8 million in Cambodia, and how is it that Cambodia's troops could overtake the Vietnamese. I won't read that discussion out, Your Honours, but I would ask you to look at it, and if you can, the prosecution's position is that the the numbers of the population viewed to be possible members of the fighting force are considered to be civilians, certainly from the point of view of Pol Pot. We would submit this is relevant in showing that this type of speech created a climate of hate against the Vietnamese amongst the Cambodian troops and also civilian authorities, and helped provide an atmosphere in which non-combatant Vietnamese were killed, as well as combatant Vietnamese, once captured, not been given the protection of the Geneva Conventions. If Your Honours now turn to E3/833, it's a notebook from S21 from a senior interrogator called Mam Nai. And in that notebook, at English 00184607 and Khmer 00077894, it appears at this stage no French is available, that on the 6th of January 1978, Chan writes, "We went and beat the Yuan thoroughly. The targets of the Yuan attack were the front of the 3rd Division of the East Zone, more than 150 regiments. That, we say, was a victory over the Yuan. We attacked inside Yuan territory and achieved the principle of 1 to 30. Again, this is a demonstration that what is said by the senior leaders of the CPK is absolutely taken note of and put into practice. And then further at English 00184616 and Khmer 00077952, and there's no French available at this stage. It states that on the 25th of July 1978, the instructions are to find the Yuan. We find them scattered everywhere. We know they are hidden Yuan in the east, in the northwest, in Phnom Penh, which we have not found, but they do in fact exist." He goes on, "We must eliminate the view that designates that it's not necessary for us to look for this. Requirements, strive to find them, must be correct and thorough." So certainly as of July 1978, we submit that this notation is relevant to showing that Vietnamese in Cambodia, away from the border dispute, were sort of people were instructed to find them, seek them out, and to target them as the Vietnamese civilians, which would include them. And then I'd go to the 17th of May 1978 at E3863, and this is a report from Ross Nim to Office 870, and it describes the Thai border situation, food shortages, etc. And then he raises the question about mixed marriages, and this is at English 00321962, Khmer 0076287, and French 0062349. And he states, "The meeting raised a question about how to decide on the elements of soldiers from the previous regime and the Yuan with Khmer spouses and the half-breed Khmer Yuan. Regarding this issue, the meeting would like to ask Angkar 870 what to do with them. Whatever Angkar decides, please give instructions. Generally speaking, these groups are scared of the situation and worried about their fate. But there is not yet any sign of opposing activities. If any of them make some suspicious activities, we will decide not to take them out. I know it's difficult to do that. The important thing is that we must be able to grasp them continuously. If they show any suspicions, we must be able to master them straight away. And then he says, that is my brief report. This assists in showing that Vietnamese civilians were certainly the subject and the target of discrimination and consequently help prove the policy of the targeting of the Vietnamese. Your Honour, I'd now like to turn to a report on the 4th of August 1978. It's E3/1094, and this is a monthly report from the West Zone, and it states at English 0031 5374 to 75, Khmer 0014 3604, and then French 0059 3530. And I quote, "It's about the screening of the UN elements, CIA agents, and not the good elements. 1. Smashed 100 ethnic UNs, including small and big adults and children. And smashed 60 persons who had been from the ranking group as well as the CIA." And then it goes on, "There must be a measure for 3 UN combatants." We would submit, Your Honours, this is clear evidence of policy to kill Vietnamese combatants and civilians. So I now just turn to the 2nd of January 1979, and this is E3/8404, and this is a statement of the Government of Democratic Kampuchea, and it's at English 0041 9728, Khmer 007 16183, and French 0001 7542. I quote, "However, the just struggle of the Kampuchean nation and people to defend their independence, sovereignty and territory integrity of the country, and to defend the principles of non-alignment, peace and stability in the Southeast Asia, in Asia and in the world, will surely win final victory over Vietnam. The Soviet international expansionists and the Warsaw Pact, which are arch criminals. Because our struggle is just, because we carry out a protracted people's war, because the whole Kampuchea people are against Vietnam, which is our hereditary enemy, because we have more and more friends, far or near, who give us aid and support of all kinds." We submit this supports the issue that Vietnamese were targeted because of race rather than simply because they were, some of them were combatants. Your Honours, I'd now like to turn to briefly two of the expert reports, and the report of the 3rd of June 2010 of Elizabeth Doe. This is E34524. This is a study on the treatment of the Vietnamese minority in democratic Kampuchea from a comparative perspective. This woman is from Stanford University, and the aim of the study was to compare the treatment of ethnic Khmer and ethnic Vietnamese during the Khmer Rouge period. And she compares the treatment of the Khmers and the Vietnamese in 6 areas: verbal abuse, forced uniformity, material deprivation, expulsion, re-education and detainment, and disappearance and extermination. The study was done over 2.5 years with field research for some part of that time in Cambodia. The sources she used were CPK documents, but largely a review of leading scholars, and with 48 interviews with Khmer, Vietnamese and Chinese survivors from across the eastern zone of democratic Kampuchea. So it's focused on the eastern zone, and she states that most of her informants were from Pre Veng and others were from Svay Rieng and Kampong Chhnang and Kandal province. Would ask Your Honours that, to look at that report, but in particular I would like to refer Your Honours to the section relating to the treatment of the ethnic Vietnamese to that of the ethnic Khmer in relation to disappearance and extermination during the DK period. At 0054 8856 to 59 English, Khmer 0076 8961 to 65, and French 0075 1016 to 20, she states, informants generally referred to 1977 or the middle of the KR period as the turning point in the Khmer Rouge's treatment of the Vietnamese in the Eastern Zone. Prior to this year, the Vietnamese had been treated similarly to other people. However, according to informants, starting around 1976 or 1977, the Khmer Rouge began collecting the Vietnamese in their villages. Informants said that when Khmer Rouge cadres took the Vietnamese away, they used a variety of different excuses, such as re-education, relocation, work, and arrest. People were generally transported from the village by horse cart and never returned. Informants who attested to the disappearance of Vietnamese people in their villages said that by the end of 1977 or 1978, most, if not all, of the Vietnamese had disappeared. Although a few Vietnamese did survive the Khmer Rouge period, they represent the exception and not the rule. In fact, the overwhelming majority of informants expressed the personal opinion that if Khmer Rouge knew someone was Vietnamese, he or she would disappear or be killed without question. Of the 27 informants whom I asked whether it was dangerous to be Vietnamese during the Khmer Rouge period, 92% responded yes. When I asked a few ethnic Vietnamese how they survived, they responded in a variety of ways. They successfully hid their ethnic identity from the Khmer Rouge in their village, they were protected by their local village chief or Khmer Rouge leader, and in one case, an informant said that the Khmer Rouge did not care that he was Vietnamese because he was a base person and a good worker. It appears that the Khmer Rouge in the Eastern Zone practice execution and disappearance against both Khmer New people and Vietnamese people, with significant death tolls and some survivors on both sides. Although Khmer New people and Vietnamese people were both extremely vulnerable to extermination by the Khmer Rouge, there were some aspects of the Vietnamese experience that differed from the Khmer experience. Firstly, informants from Pocham Dam noted a pattern in how their local Khmer Rouge collected Vietnamese families, all of which consisted of Khmer and Vietnamese spouses. Informants said they observed the Khmer Rouge collecting the mother and children of a family if the mother was Vietnamese, but only the father of the family if the father was Vietnamese. Informants observed this pattern in the Khmer Rouge collection of all 4 Vietnamese families in Pocham Dam and said that Khmer Rouge cadres did not make such a distinction when they collected other people from the village. Informants from other villages, however, said that the Khmer Rouge in their village collected only the Vietnamese parent and not his or her children. And still other informants said the Khmer Rouge cadres collected the entire family if they found out that even one member was Vietnamese. All of these patterns were observed by informants and never publicly announced as a policy of the Khmer Rouge. The pattern observed in Pocham Dam village though, it raises a possible distinction between the Khmer and Vietnamese experience requires more investigation. There is more evidence of difference in the Vietnamese and Khmer people's experiences in terms of each ethnic group's ability to evade Khmer Rouge extermination. The Vietnamese in democratic Kampuchea had few personal means to evade execution. As was discussed in the forced uniformity section, some ethnic Vietnamese possessed obvious physical differences from ethnic Khmer people, such as lighter skin and different accents when speaking Khmer. Such physical conditions were more difficult to hide than something intangible, such as the new people's class status or previous employment. Vietnamese people's ethnic difference thus made it more likely that they would be identified by the Khmer Rouge and more easily exterminated. The degree to which the Khmer Rouge sought to eliminate the Vietnamese also differed from its campaign against new people. Khmer Rouge public announcements displaying a willingness to kill fellow Khmer associated with Vietnam reveals the determination of the Khmer Rouge to eliminate any remote traces of the Vietnamese in their country. Informants also asserted that if the Khmer Rouge found out someone was Vietnamese, he or she would surely be killed. These examples illustrate how ethnic Khmer who remained in Cambodia suffered more of an immediate threat to their livelihood because the policies enacted towards them did not tolerate even their mere physical presence. Doing elaborates on this point by writing that the regime did not give ethnic Vietnamese the option to relinquish their ethnic identity as a mechanism for survival. One Khmer Rouge stated, if a person was ethnic Vietnamese, it was certain they wouldn't survive. Once they were discovered, that was it. Lastly, the Khmer Rouge extermination practices exacted different impacts on the Khmer and Vietnamese population. Although a few Vietnamese survived, the overwhelming majority of the population of remaining Vietnamese died by the end of the Khmer Rouge period. So much so that some scholars even proposed that the entire population was annihilated. Although Khmer and New people suffered extremely high numbers of death, the extermination of those groups did not have the same proportional impact on their populations. Mack writes about how the organised nature of the Khmer Rouge extermination campaign against the Vietnamese and the resulting death toll among the population differentiates the Vietnamese case. And I quote, "Compared to other groups, the ethnic Vietnamese population was completely exterminated. It estimated that 100% of the country's remaining ethnic Vietnamese populations, or 10,000 to 20,000 people, died between 1975 and 79. In contrast, 40% of the ethnic Lao, Thai and Cham populations died. Obviously a significant loss, but not proportionally comparable. Additionally, while the DK also initiated irredentist campaigns against Thailand and Laos, its aggression against Vietnam was the most fervent. Numerous documents and decrees on Khmer-Vietnamese relations illustrate DK's targeted and well-planned campaign. For these reasons, the Vietnamese and Khmer populations face different treatment in terms of extermination and disappearance. Your Honour, as I further turn to the author's conclusion at English 0054 8861, Khmer 0076 8966 to 69, and French 0078, sorry, 0075 1021 to 24. She states, differences in the forced uniformity and expulsion categories were clear. The Vietnamese were forced to shed their language and claim to their ethnic identity, which the new people, being predominantly Khmer, did not. The Khmer Rouge also carried out official campaigns to remove the Vietnamese from democratic Kampuchea, which it did not do to Khmer or new people. The nature of the extermination campaigns against the two groups also differed, as well as the impact that extermination had on each group's greater population. In these episodes of disparate treatment, both ethnic and political factors were at play. As soon as the Khmer Rouge took power, it publicly announced that there was to be only a Khmer race and began the regime's pursuit for an ethnically pure democratic Kampuchea. Most informants remembered hearing Khmer Rouge leaders in the village meetings and everyday conversation repeatedly call the Vietnamese the historical enemy and refer to Vietnam's past exploitation and abuse of Khmer people, such as the Tay Ong incident. Informants also attested to the Khmer Rouge's almost exclusive use of the word yuan to refer to the Vietnamese people. Although the word may not have originated as hate speech, the way in which it was used during the Khmer Rouge period, as evidenced in the Black Paper, loaded the term with at least a disrespectful tone towards the Vietnamese, which was very likely known to those who employed the term. Such rhetoric provides evidence of the fact that the Khmer Rouge was quite fixated on promoting ethnic cleansing and invoking ethnic resentment. This explains the regime's policies and practices of banning the Vietnamese language and culture, and even physically removing Vietnamese people from the country. Ethnic identity also played a role in the Khmer Rouge's extermination of the Vietnamese, with some Khmer Rouge carrying out massacres of whole Vietnamese communities without any signs of provocation aside from race. It appears that the regime was also influenced by political factors, such as the antagonism with the VWP and the border war that resulted from the breakdown in their political relationship. We see evidence of such political motivations, particularly in the regime's expulsion and extermination policies. In the context of the regional war, security became a top priority for the DK government. In the Black Paper, the Khmer Rouge rationalised its purge of the Vietnamese from the country by writing that, quote, Vietnamese nationals had secretly infiltrated into Kampuchea and were living in hiding among the population, unquote. Informant responses and chronological records show that as diplomatic relations between the two countries worsened, the Khmer Rouge's extermination of ethnic Vietnamese became more frequent, violent, explicit, and widespread. Informants consistently cited 1977 or around 1977, when the border war began, as the year that the Khmer Rouge increased hate speech about the Vietnamese and began collecting the Vietnamese in their villages. This claim is further supported by several public announcements in 1977 and 1978, inciting violence against the Vietnamese in order to defend Cambodia. These findings indicate that the Vietnamese, at least in the eastern zone of democratic Kampuchea, were subject to discriminatory treatment, both in terms of the Khmer Rouge policy, deliberately singling them out, and in terms of Khmer Rouge policy, indirectly imposing a different impact on them. Your Honours, that was the conclusion from Elizabeth Doe's paper based on 48 informant interviews that she made in Cambodia in 2008 and 2009. In relation to experts, I'd ask Your Honours to take note of E3/2413, and this is the report of the 30th of September 2009. It's the demographic report of Eva Tebow. Dr. Tebow is a demographer, as you know, and she was tasked by the co-investigating judges to analyse the death toll, which is otherwise known as the excess mortality rates, based on the best information available during the DK period. She also examined the demographic evidence to conclude on the death toll excess mortality of the Vietnamese population living in Cambodia between 1975 and 1978. Sorry, I believe that should be 1979. And at English 0038 5310 to 11 and Khmer 0049 9517 to 18 and French 0040 5354, she states in relation to the Vietnamese, the number of Vietnamese in Cambodia was consistently reported to be 400,000 or more around 1970 by several authors. Judging from their figures on outmigration of the Vietnamese, of those 400,000, some 200,000 were expelled by Lon Nol in 1970, and another 150 to 200,000 left Cambodia after the Khmer Rouge took power in April 1975. Many Vietnamese were killed, according to Kiernan, by Lon Nol and Khmer Rouge forces, such that hardly any of them survived until January 1979. Kiernan figures of 20,000 Vietnamese still living in Cambodia around April 1975 are likely a good estimate. And so is his estimate that all 20,000 of them died from the hands of the Khmer Rouge during the years from April 1975 to 1979. Your Honours, if I can briefly turn to Ben Kiernan's book, E3/1593, The Pol Pot Regime, Race, Power and Genocide in Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge, 1975-1979, first published in 1996. At English 00678650 and Khmer 0063.
Deputy Co-Prosecutor, please slow your pace and repeat the last document number and related EINs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. President, I apologise. So English 00678650, Khmer 0063 7821, and French 0063 90734. From that section down, there's approximately a two-page section where Ben Kiernan brings his research together on the Vietnamese, and he states, in fact, that 150,000 ethnic Vietnamese civilians had left Cambodia, or the CPK had expelled them by September 1975. And then, and I won't go through it in particular, but he then goes through talking about the period in mid-1976, and then discusses the period 1977 in the West Zone, and 1977 in the coastal regions, and also 1977 in the Eastern Zone and the Northeast Zone. And certainly from his evidence that he footnotes in relation to authors' interviews with CPK cadre, others, other reports, it's his conclusion that there was a systematic campaign against the Vietnamese that was countrywide. Not just in the East Zone, not just in Phay Reng or Prey Veng, but across the country, and particularly had solidified in 1977. Just refer Your Honours to one last document, and this is from Nguyen Chia's book, Behind the Killing Fields. It's E3/4202, written by Tet Sambat and Gina Chon, and it's obviously the autobiography of Nguyen Chia. And there's one quote, 007520 in English, French 00849413, in Khmer 00858306. And he states, Nguyen Chia states, if we did not kill the internal traitors in our party, if we did not smash the enemy, there would be no Cambodia today. If we looked at the resistance movement, when we fought an enemy that had good weapons and artillery, we thought it was a big deal. But the internal enemies were the worst and even more dangerous to the party and country. But we did not kill innocent people. In this quote, and obviously in the video, Enemies of the People, it's clear that Nguyen Chia admits to smashing enemies or killing enemies who were not innocent people. I think, Your Honours, we submit from the documents, from the policy documents emanating from Office 870, the speeches at the anniversary meetings, the revolutionary flags, they all paint together a picture that Vietnamese, not only combatants but civilians, were viewed to be enemies during the Democratic Kampuchea period. And certainly in relation to, from Nguyen Chia's perspective, we submit that that type of quote supports the case that the Vietnamese were targeted for killing during the Democratic Kampuchea period. That's the end of the presentation.
President, thank you. It is now convenient time for a short break. The chamber will take a short break from now until 5 to 3. The court is now in recess.
Oh.